Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar, A 9-Step Guide to Promotion. We're so happy you all could join us today. My name is Susan Barron. I'm in the department here at LaSalle Network. Just to give you a quick background, LaSalle Network is a staffing, recruiting, and culture firm, and we specialize in placing people in 8 different lines of business, from marketing to accounting and finance. Since we began in 1998, we have grown every single year. And because of this amazing growth and our culture, we have been nationally recognized in top publications, including the Tribune, Crain's, and Inc. 5000. And of course, this could all not be possible without our amazing speaker today, the founder and CEO of LaSalle Network, Tom Gimbel. Tom has been in the recruiting industry for almost 2 decades and is an expert on career and leadership advice. He's been a contributor on CNBC, The Today Show, Inc., and Wall Street Journal, just to name a few. So we're really excited to have him here today. Just a few more reminders before we get started. Get the most out of this webinar and really stay engaged. If you have any questions at all, simply put them in the GoToWebinar question box located on the right side of your screen, or you can go on Twitter and follow our webinar conversation with the hashtag LaSalleWebinar. Simply tweet your questions or comments and tag our Twitter page and use our hashtag. So we look forward to hearing what you have to say. Let's go ahead and get started. Here's a quick look at our 9-step agenda today and what we'll cover. So we'll cover how to build a relationship with your boss, how to start the conversation of a promotion and communicate clearly, how to sharpen your saw and really sharpen your skills, how to be competitive, work harder than your colleagues, challenge yourself and be a culture giver, not a culture taker. And lastly, we'll end with networking within the company and how to find a mentor. So Tom, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you now.
Really glad to be with you and glad to be with all of our listeners, viewers, participants today, as I think it's a really interesting topic of how to get promoted. And there's probably 75 steps, right? So what I've tried to do here is consolidate that down to some pretty, I think a lot of the stuff is basic. I think some of it's a little bit more abstract. However, at the same time, we need to revisit these things all the time if we want to have a career that's going from 0 to 60 in record speed. And now if you don't, and that's not important to you, then you can pick and choose things off of this to help your career project. However, my belief is if you're going to go to work, why not want to be the best? If you're going to be the best, take on more responsibility. And I believe that the satisfaction you're going to get from going at your best, at your fullest speed, is something that you really, it's almost like the endorphins you get from a runner's high. And until you do it, you don't really know what those feel like. So give yourself every chance in the world and give your career everything you have. So before we get started, we're going to go into a poll, I believe, Susan, if you're ready to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. So everyone should see a poll launched on their screen right now. To rate your happiness level at work, 5, you're extremely happy, or 1, extremely unhappy. So we'll give you a few minutes to answer this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now and show the results. If you can see them on your screen. So Tom, it shows here about 21% are extremely happy, 25% are happy, 38% are mild, 13% are unhappy, and 4% are extremely unhappy. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this back over to you.
That's like the results of when I take my 3 kids out for wings and how we are feeling after we get the extra spicy habanero. So I think it's probably not that far from the truth, is that the highest percentage, the 38%, was on the mild. They're neither happy nor unhappy. It's a JOB, if I can translate the words a little bit. And I think that's kind of where the state of, if we're sitting in the elevator on a high-rise building, if you work there and you see the video screens and it gives you these stats and it says about the engagement percentage that workers feel, that's not too far off. And I think it lends us to this next slide of happy versus unhappy. And happy people belong to a culture of challenging work where they're allowed to be confident in what they're doing, the opportunity to grow, and be passionate. The difference is that employees who are happy want to be managed. They want to be challenged. They want to be accountable. And there's other ones that want to be left alone to do what they want to do, but they never necessarily have the sense of fulfillment that the ones who are held accountable by their peers and their superiors do, because there's that level of engagement. And one of the challenges that people face today is if you want to get promoted, it's really hard to have a lot of flexibility with not having to be in the office, because what studies have shown is that the most promoted people are the ones who are around their bosses and their subordinates all the time. And it's that level of engagement which creates the opportunity for new opportunities. Now, it's different. I'm not talking about global Fortune 100 or global Fortune 500 companies, because obviously you could be running the European division and not be around the CEO who you report to, so on and so forth. When you look at unhappy, it's high pressure demands are overlooked, you're feeling underpaid, a bad relationship with the boss, and you don't enjoy the work itself. And what our studies have shown is that the not enjoying the work usually leads to a bad relationship with your boss and feeling that you're underpaid. And it all starts from the interpersonal relationships that I feel are crucial to getting promoted in a linear trajectory of what you can accomplish and where your career is going to go. So when you look at happy and unhappy, studies show that happiness leads to a 12% spike in productivity, right? I mean, you look at 12% and you say, well, that's not that much. Well, if you have $10,000, that's an extra $1,200 bucks. I'll take it if you don't want it. And I think we've got to look at where that lends itself. And then unhappy workers have a 10% decrease in productivity. And when you have a decrease in productivity, that's a really important thing to look at, because the decrease in productivity goes to a point of not necessarily affecting you today, but affecting you next week, next month, next year. And when your productivity decreases, you're actually limiting your ability to get promoted, and you don't even know it. And so there's wanting a promotion, there's being passed over a promotion you're not sure you wanted, and then there's also the line in the sand of getting demoted or getting terminated, separated from your employment. So it all falls in line with what you need to do to get promoted. So the takeaway in evaluating your career that you have to ask right off the bat, are you passionate about your job? Now, I'm not saying you can't get promoted and not be passionate. There are a ton of people in traditional positions where there's jokes and sitcoms and dramas written about people who are hugely successful, whether it's doctors or lawyers or accountants, and they get promoted and rise up, and they don't love the work, but they're technically very strong. It happens. It's okay. It's possible. Okay? I'm saying, for the purpose of this webinar on education, is if you like what you're doing, you're more inclined to do more of it. If you do more of it, you're more inclined to be better at it. If you're better at it, you're more inclined to get promoted. Okay? Do you like your fellow coworkers? Why do you want to be promoted and have more responsibility in an organization in which you don't care for the people you work with? Now, you may want to change things from the inside and get promoted and do that, but it can't be the majority of the people you dislike. Right? So loving the work and not liking the people is almost as bad, if not worse, than liking the work and not loving the people, or vice versa. So I think you got to be very careful on that. And then do you look forward to coming into the office? Right? When I was a kid, I dreaded Sundays. I didn't like them. I didn't want to go to school. Now, side note that no one really cares about. Today is hereditary because my kids dread Sundays and going to school on Monday too. But I love going to work. And I look forward to Sundays and knowing that Monday the competition starts again. That Monday I have to go and figure out how to motivate my team. Monday I have to go to work and figure out how to make more breakthroughs with my clients, figure out new ideas to implement with our company. I enjoy Mondays, and the people I love working with enjoy Mondays. Doesn't mean they don't like Saturdays and Sundays. It means they wouldn't want 7 days of that either. They enjoy the stimulation you get. I like movies. It doesn't mean I don't like books. We've got to be aggressive and excited about what the workplace holds for us. So if you look on this side, 40% of millennials expect a promotion every 1 to 2 years. Now, this 9 steps to getting a promotion isn't about millennials. It's about everybody. But what we've got is now a workforce of people between the ages of 22 and 33 that are under the guise that within 2 years they can get a promotion. And a lot of people who are in the baby boomer era age group think that that's too aggressive. I say they're wrong. I say, why can't people who come in and earn it and work in a meritocracy get promoted? Why can't a rookie baseball MVP or an all-star in his first year? Or why can't a woman player in college in her freshman year be captain of the team if she earns it? Life should be a meritocracy. And I think that if people do the work, they should get promoted. Now, the knock on millennials is that there's an expectation that they deserve it. Nobody deserves anything except to breathe the air. And I think in this day and age, you're still guaranteed water somewhere around the place. You usually have to buy it these days. And so we want to make sure that people, if you're over the age of 33 and you think that millennials don't deserve to be promoted, I think you got to look in the mirror and wake up and say, if they're good at their job and they're working their butt off, why don't they? Be part of the solution, not the problem. And if it's because you feel threatened by them, I think you got to look at how hard you're working and what you wanted. Right? So if we look at not being promoted, when was the last time you stayed late or came in early to finish a project? Right? I get it. I have 3 kids of my own. There's issues at home that affect what you can do. But this is about prioritizing your career. And you're saying you want to get promoted, you've got to sometimes put your career first. Now, I have 3 children. Now, my view on this is my career is like having a 4th child. It cannot always come last. It cannot always come first. It doesn't always come in the middle. I prioritize. I have 3 kids. I can't make every soccer game for every kid if they're all on Saturday afternoon in different parts of the city. So I have to choose the priorities. I view my career as a kid, and it's one of 4. And 25% of the time, it's got to win out. I've got to sacrifice. Nothing great is accomplished without sacrifice. When was the last time you raised your hand for a new project, right? The biggest challenge that people face in complaints is if you complain, then you've got to be part of the solution. And if you're part of the solution, that usually requires a little bit of extra work. So a lot of people don't voice their opinion. They bitch, air quotes, under the desk, and they're not willing to be part of the solution. And then when was the last time you helped a coworker without being asked? When did you go up to them and go, you look a little stressed, is there anything I can take off your plate? Right? It's those kind of things that are in that catchphrase of the new millennium is paying it forward. Right? Pay it forward in the office. Ask people if they need help, and let's figure out how to start giving without expecting something in the beginning, and there really is an intrinsic value there. So Susan, I'm going to ask you if you can run another poll question here.
Yep, everyone should see the poll launch on their screen. And the question is, what type of relationship do you have with your boss? So we'll give you all a few minutes to answer this. But while we wait, Tom, I wanted to ask you just to tell the audience why you think this question is important. Why are we asking why it's important to have a relationship with your boss to get promoted?
Well, there's 2 schools of thought. There's a lot of employees out there that'll say, this person got promoted because they were the boss's favorite, right? I think those are issues, but that's real life. That's real life. And whether it's in your friend, if you have a group of 6 friends, right, you're not all equals. You might say, well, it's not a meritocracy in friendship. There's always different feelings. Well, that's life, and feelings come into the workplace. And the question is, if you're really good at your job and the boss wants to get promoted, why wouldn't they promote the best person? And the only answer that can come back isn't that they liked somebody else more, it's that they liked you less. And you have to figure out what your behavior is doing to not make your work product overshadow the feeling. I think that's the number one. When you start pointing fingers that someone else got a promotion because they were liked better, you're not looking in the mirror. It's too easy to point fingers. You can watch the presidential debate if you want to point fingers. Let's focus on looking in the mirror and solving problems.
Thanks, Tom. Well, it looks like we have all of the answers in here, so I'm going to close it out and share the results. So about 43% said that they have a great relationship, which is great, and then 29% said that they have a good relationship, and 29% also said that they have a neutral relationship, not bad, not great. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Tom.
Okay. So when you look at building a personal and professional relationship with your boss, we've got the 43% say they have a great relationship. That's terrific, because if you have a great relationship, You can have what I call a brutal truth conversation. You can sit down with your manager and you can say, I'm ready. I'm ready for you to tell me how it is. Tell me both personality-wise and professionally what I do wrong, where I offend people, what I need to do more of, and be ready for the feedback. Don't be defensive. You're asking for it. You want to know that. The best producers I know, and I'm not talking revenue, I'm talking workplace culture and whether they're accountants or marketing, HR or sales, it doesn't make a difference. The best people I know want to hear bad news. They want to hear where they're failing. They want to hear where their department's failing. They want to hear where their company's falling short so they can make changes to make it better. So you got to want to hear it, and you got to check your ego and your confidence at the door, right? If you have a good relationship, you've got to figure out why it's not great. Right? And usually it's time spent before and after the workday. People don't want to hear this, right? But when they say that it's a quote-unquote old boys network of playing golf and doing things, it's not about golf. It could be bowling, twiddlywinks, playing checkers in the park. It's about time spent with somebody. So if there is a company outing, if there's a picnic, if there's a happy hour, right? If your boss is there early in the morning, you've got to figure out how you're going to align, not point fingers that you don't play golf. And those are the way you start to build relationships, right? If you have a neutral relationship that's not bad and not great, I think you're in a pretty good place because you have the opportunity to try to build that stronger. And I'm a big believer in the employer-employee relationship, the manager-employee relationship, that it's really twofold. The job of the manager is to get the employee promoted, assuming that's what they want. If an employee wants to get promoted, and that should be clear, that the job of the manager is to get them promoted. It may take 6 months, may take 6 years, right? Every company is different about whether there's promotions that are open in mass, whether somebody's got to die for there to be an opening. I don't know what it is in every corporation, but we've got to understand that. And then the flip side is the job of the employee is to make the manager happy. And I don't mean getting her coffee or picking up her dry cleaning. I mean making her happy of saying, what do I need to do in my role to make you happy with my performance? Maybe it's deadlines. Maybe it's creativity. I don't know the answers to that. You need to find that out. So that's part of knowing what's expected from you. Asking for feedback and advice. That's saying, give me the straight poop on what you think of me. Where's my area to improve? Offering your help. I want you to know that if there's other projects outside of my area that you ever need my help, I'd love to play a role in cross-training, right, in adding value. Be prepared. They might say, you know what, why don't you do your job perfectly, and then we can come back and revisit that. Be ready for that. Get to know them. Don't be goofy, stalkerish, crazy, right? Don't want to be in their cereal bowl and know what they're making their kids for breakfast on Saturday morning. But genuinely, when you see them, ask, how was your weekend? How was your night? If you know that they were coming back from a trip, how was the trip? Ask, and then know when to cut it off. Right? The best salespeople in the world know how to ask questions, get answers, and when to exit without offending. Under-promise and over-deliver. Right? The biggest issue somebody can make is to say when we're interviewing people is, I have great attention to detail. I'm a perfectionist. If you are, it better be perfect, and there better be no details that aren't dead on, right? So really, there's one thing to say it. There's another one to live it. Okay, under promise and over deliver, and then understand your type of boss and how to communicate with them. So we're going to go into a few slides of different ones, and we do it from a comical standpoint because if we didn't poke fun at it, we'd lose your attention, assuming you're semi-ADHD like I am. So we've got types of bosses here, right? I think you all know these characters from your favorite sitcoms, right? You have the uncaring boss, Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, right? It's all about making money, right? He'd hang Homer up by his toenails if he had to make a buck. And if that's your boss, you've got to figure out, you took this job, and the assumption is that you interviewed with your boss, right? And we've got to take some assumptions on an interview, right? It's one-sided here. But I'm going to assume that you took this job and you'd met with your boss. You might not have known how uncaring they were, but they're uncaring. So even more directly, you need to find out what will make them happy. You need to find out what's important to them and meet those deadlines. Remember those lessons when you were playing sports as a kid or you had a bad teacher and your parents would say, one day you're going to have a bad boss and you're going to have to need to understand how to work with that and make it work. This is the time. And the good news about an uncaring boss is it's black and white. Usually these bosses, it's just about the work, right? So have your relationships laterally, horizontally, not vertically, and find out what you're going to be measured by and make it happen, right? The narcissistic boss, right? So it's Jack Donaghy from 30 Rock, right? And, you know, obviously every boss is an extreme, but Jack makes it about Jack. And it's the credit always falls on Jack's lap, not on other people's, and the blame is elsewhere. Now, I personally don't see this boss in the workplace as much as it's portrayed on television. It usually happens in more retail-based environments, and you see it in different areas. However, I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. The question you have to figure out is, A, how long do you want to stay in that environment, because it's hard to tell that from an interview. And B, if you're working on the project, even if your boss takes credit for it, you have to have the assumption that somebody's going to know that it wasn't your boss, wasn't the only one doing the work, right? And the next best thing to being the captain or the star on the team is to be on the team, right? And so the whole team may get promoted. Maybe this boss takes you with them, right? We all have different types of relationships in our lives, and we've got to accept people for what they are. And remember, if you're doing challenging work and you're with a great company and you like your coworkers, to have a boss that's a little bit more about them, it gives you the opportunity to flourish and develop your skills. It could be worse. Then you've got the best friend boss, right? So Michael Scott from The Office. It's common in workplaces where people are promoted from within, right? Now, he wanted to be best friends, but everybody wasn't necessarily best friends with him. So you have a little bit of a difference. So I'm going to skew this slide a little bit and say, let's talk about the relationship that peers have when one of them gets promoted. And in a lot of sales environments, a lot of millennial hiring environments, you see that quite a bit. But it can happen across the spectrum with Gen Xers or baby boomers as well, is when you have peers and one gets promoted to lead the group, how that comes into play. And it's a testament to the manager, but also the employee. It takes two to tango and to really make that work. But if you're concerned about the relationship, you've got to tell your boss that. You've got to say, I'm a little nervous about this, right? And hoping that they care enough about the relationship. But if you have feelings about something in the workplace and you don't express it, you're part of the problem. You're part of the problem. So then you got the buzzword boss, which I think is every boss in America is saying some form of buzzword at some time, right? Everybody wants there to be synergies. Believe me, if you are an employee of an organization, they want you to be the game changer, right? They want you to be so good that it changes how this department, this company is viewed in the marketplace. And the number one buzzword that you should be thinking about is bandwidth. How much capacity do you have? And I got to tell you, there's nothing wrong with having your capacity of bandwidth get filled up. You can work on expanding it, but people want to believe that it's got to be always unfillable. Well, guess what? When you're in freshman year of high school, your bandwidth may be full, and you get through the end of freshman year, and now it's expanded, and you can take on more sophomore year or senior year to college, graduate school, work, different departments. And so you've got to challenge yourself. What are you doing to learn to get to know this boss, and what does the boss really mean, right? And again, I'm not saying there aren't bosses that say things for the sake of saying them versus the actuality of what it means, but you've got to find out what they're looking for. Then you have the perfectionist. Extremely driven and enforces high standards, and they're often micromanagers. Yes and no. I think there's all a difference of what perfectionist is and what they want and why they want it to be perfect, right? But it's better to have a boss that strives to be perfect than a boss that settles for mediocrity, right? And it may not be fun to have somebody red pen your document 7 times before it's ready to go. It may stink. You may question it. But I got to tell you, everybody wants to get things off their desk. So they're doing it to make it better. It may be frustrating as all heck, but they're doing it to make you better. And you've got to say, do you want to be challenged at that level? But once you understand that, you can figure out what's really important to you. Communication's the key. You've got to communicate your successes and your failures, right? But you've also got to be willing to find out why you're failing or what you missed or what you're doing wrong. There's this tool that came out, I don't know, 15 or so years ago called Google. And if you're not using it to find out how to do things on your own, if you're not searching for what meanings are and definitions, if you're not searching for strategies to take on new projects, it may not always be right what you find on the internet, but it can help you become more educated about different ways of doing things. Ask what you can do to improve. We touched on that. And don't be afraid to speak up and share ideas. But be ready for your ideas to be shot down. Don't be so arrogant to think that every idea you have is right. You need to take baby steps sometimes. And once you have a win or 2 wins under your belt, then more of your ideas will be accepted. But we have a rule around here all the time, and we say this with our clients too. Don't be afraid to give an opinion, and I won't be afraid to shoot it down, right? Because the worst thing that can happen is a manager who tells you it's a great idea and never implements it. Because now they're setting up false expectations. You think you're always right, and now you judge them for having no follow-through, when really they didn't like your idea to begin with, but they didn't have the guts to be confrontational with you and tell you it wasn't a good idea. Start the conversation. You want to get promoted, ask where you stand. Remember, the moment you start asking about a promotion, be prepared to do more work. Be prepared to hit harder deadlines. Be prepared to put in more time. Because when you ask where you stand, it doesn't say what you're not doing. And you may be the person that takes 12 hours to do 8 hours of work. You may be the person that can do 8 hours of work in 8 hours of work. And if you're the lucky, you know what, that can do 8 hours of work in 6 hours, then why aren't you putting in 8 or 9 hours to get 10 or 11 hours of productivity and really get that promotion? And then leave with next steps. Every time you meet with your manager, summarize the meeting in an email. Hi, Mary. Thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. Just want to recap what we talked about and what my action steps were. Look forward to getting this project done for you. It shows follow-up. It shows attention to detail. It shows that you care. Training and development. There's a variety of steps you can take to train and develop yourself to become better at your job and push yourself towards a promotion. If you're not willing to put in the time to do training and development on your own in addition to at work, then do you really want to be promoted? Depending whether you're a millennial or you're a Gen Xer or a baby boomer, it was either you a few years ago or it's your kids today or your nieces or nephews or grandchildren, right? Parents will spend a ton of money to get their kids training and development with tutors, with sports coaches, with private lessons for music and instruments and debate club and all sorts of things. But they won't spend the time or the attention to do it for themselves. Training and development is the most overlooked thing in personal growth to get a promotion. So sharpening the saw, right? Trying evening class at the local university, reading new books, attending work-related events, listening to a trending podcast or webinar, listening to a non-trending podcast or webinar, expanding your horizons. The saw story is there's 2 woodcutters. And they're both cutting trees all day long. The first woodcutter takes breaks throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year. And they're sharpening the saw, taking a break to recharge their muscles, to be better. Woodcutter B just cuts straight through. Never takes a break, never sharpens their tools, never recharges, right? Woodcutter A is what you want to be. And it's over the course of a week, a month, a year, a decade, right? Are you taking the time to get better? Are you recharging your brain? Are you learning? Are you in mentor groups? Are you in public speaking sessions? What are you doing? Look in the mirror and saying, what am I doing to be better? Not what am I doing more of, what am I doing to be better? Most people don't want to answer the bell on that question. They don't want to put in more time. They just want to get more reward. I'm going to hand it back to Susan for a podcast or for a poll here.
Thanks, Tom. Yep, this is our last poll, and I'm launching it right now, so you should see it on your screens. It's, are you competitive? So I'll give you a minute or two to answer this, but I know we can get pretty competitive here at LaSalle, but Tom, how would you rate your own competitive level? From 5 being you compete at anything, anytime, anywhere, and 1, your motto is everyone's a winner, we don't need to compete.
No, I think there's a happy medium there, and it depends on. I'm a human being. I'm not a cyborg. I'm not one of these competitive athletes that wants to win at everything. I like to get along with people, but I'm a big believer that if the race is to 100, I want to get to 100 first, and I want everybody else to be at 99. But I like to win as much as the next person. What I don't do is I don't let losing ruin me. I don't let it ruin my day, my week, my month. What I let it do is say, it makes me reflective. Why did I lose? What do I have to do next time to win? And that usually allows me to grow.
Awesome. All right, well, it looks like everyone's answers are in, so I'm going to close the poll now and share the results. About 7% said that they compete at anything, anytime, anywhere. 55, the majority, said that they're very competitive with most activities. 34% said that they're kind of competitive, and about 3% said that their motto is everyone is a winner, we don't need to compete. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Tom.
Well, if you've ever gone up for a promotion and not getting it, you know that everybody's not a winner. And it doesn't mean that you're a loser. It just means you're not always a winner. And I think we've just got to be honest. It's, you know, the conversation that I give a lot is about downsizing. And if a company's downsizing, folks, and somebody else, now there's certain situations where people want to take a package to move on and try something else. I'm not talking about that, right? That's a voluntary downsizing. But if you've been downsized and there's somebody that remains at that company with your job, you were fired. They chose not to keep you, right? It's accountability. It's owning where you're at in the pecking order. It's saying what you're good at, what you're not, why somebody else was better than you. And competing at anything, anytime, anywhere, only 7% said that. And I would say that number in any group is somewhere between 7 and 15%. Very competitive with most activity was overwhelming at 55%. And that's a very healthy number for that, right? When you're looking at internal competitiveness, that's a good thing. Remember, if somebody's not doing their job to the best of their abilities, that hurts the company. If the company doesn't do well, they've got to lay people off. If they lay people off, you may not have your job. So you want people in your department to be competitive, whether it's doing collections calls, creating marketing proposals, being an administrative assistant, being an accountant, being a salesperson, being a recruiter, right? It's important to have people who are competitive against their teammates and themselves in order to grow. Because if they don't, your company will go out of business. Working harder than your colleagues. This is not a bad thing. You've got to practice hard to be better. You should want to be better than your boss. You should want to be better than your peers. This is about you. This is about, do you want to make more money? Do you want more responsibility? Do you want to feel that other people believe in you? You can't do that if you're not competitive and want to get that. Otherwise, somebody else will. And if you want to be promoted and not be competitive, there are opportunities like that. However, eventually you hit a ceiling because the higher up you get, the fewer jobs there are for promotability. And if you want to do it, you got to want it. And you got to be willing to invest the time to be better. So maybe it's being competitive against yourself. Maybe it's just working harder than your colleagues. But if you look at the video that we have, the GIF that we have on the screen, a basketball team or a football team is a perfect example. They're competing against each other for the teams. They all want to start, but they're all part of the team. They're excited when the quarterback scores. The backup quarterback's excited when they win the Super Bowl or get to the playoffs. Doesn't mean he doesn't want to be the starting quarterback, and that's the way you've got to attack your career. You got to have a rival. You've got to find somebody who's the best in your company, the best in your industry, the best in your market at what they're doing, and want to beat them. Want to be the best accountant, the best marketing person. Want to be asked to be a speaker at a conference. Pepsi and Coke don't like each other. The Cubs and the Sox both want to be the best team with the most attendance in the city. It's okay to have a rivalry. Reveal ways to improve. Encourage creativity. It doesn't mean there isn't enough business for both. It doesn't mean your coworker can't have a job there. It just means that when your boss or your boss's boss needs a project to get done, you want them to come and ask you for it, right? And the sense you get from that is huge. Challenge yourself, right? Know where your comfort zone, and then realize that outside of your comfort zone, those are the people that get promoted. If you worked 1 extra hour a day, times 5 days a week, times 50 weeks a year, plus an extra 2 hours on the weekend, when your kids go to bed, when your kids are doing their homework, when your boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife is traveling for business or at the glued in front of the TV watching the NFL on Sunday or shopping or whatever it is they do. You spend 2 hours on the weekend, right? That gives you an extra 2 months a year. In 1 calendar year, you've worked an extra 2 months. You're getting 14 months of work in 12 months. That's the type of attitude that gets you promoted quickly. You might say, I don't want to have to do that. That's fine. And there may be places you can still get promoted. I'm telling you things that will get you promoted. Right? You can lose weight by exercising. You can also lose weight if you don't eat so much. Right? You can do one or the other. If you do both, the odds of losing weight increase. Those are the types of things and the mentality you have to have if you indeed want to get promoted and get promoted quickly. So what's your takeaway? Build strong work habits. Be dependable. Start your day strong. You got to come in with an attitude. If you're one of these people that says, I'm not a morning person, I got to tell you, that's not a great way to make a first impression, right? You're getting, now I'm not telling, there are great leaders, huge executives that'll say, I'm not a morning person. But when they were staff level people, they were grinding it out all the time. Right? Plan your weeknights. Look at your week. You got to spend some of that hour over the weekend to look at your week and say, kids recital on Tuesday, best friend's bachelorette party on Friday, yoga class on Wednesday. So I'm going to stay late on Tuesday and Thursday to get ahead on that project. Prepare for the next day. Think about what you have to do. Have it ready. Look at who the hardest working, most successful people are in the office. If you find yourself hanging out with people who are always at the bottom of the food chain, if you find yourself hanging out with people that don't get promoted, if you find yourself associating with people who are the complainers in the office, right? There's a theory out there that our personalities or who we are is a culmination of the 5 people we spend the most time with in our lives. Well, our work lives are very similar in that front. Is that the people you spend the most time with are really who you learn the most from. And if you're learning from superiors versus subordinates, or people who are entry level versus staff, senior, and executive level, that's where you're missing the mark. You've got to want to hang around with people that are pushing themselves. Be a culture giver, right? So if you love where you work, and if you have a great manager, you probably have a fairly decent culture at the company, or you wouldn't love your manager so much. Be involved. Cheer others on. Every single coach loves the player at the end of the bench who cheers as though she's going to get into the game, right? They are the morale boosters. If you're people that aren't the best, they better have a great attitude, right? Great attitudes give you more opportunity. More opportunity gives you a chance to develop. When you develop, you grow. When you grow, you get more opportunity. When you get more opportunity, you can learn and do better, right? Be a brand advocate. Love your company. Love your department. Have a positive attitude. No one wants to be around a complainer. Know the company's mission and be passionate about it. If your company sells paper clips, God bless. I got to tell you, when I'm out of paper clips and I really need one, that's an important person for me, right? Desks, furniture, consulting, bioengineering, it doesn't make a difference. Working at a hospital, a law firm, it doesn't matter. Be passionate about what the company's mission is. Give it everything you've got, right? Networking, different switch on this. Internally networking. Look at your company. How well do you know people in other departments? How well do you know what those other people do, right? If an employee in another department is complaining about their manager, be part of the solution, not the problem. Ask them why. Usually it's a two-way street, right? My dad used to always say when my brother and I would have bloody lips and we were fighting, we'd blame the other one. He goes, it takes two to tango, right? It's the same thing at work, right? If you have a bad manager, maybe you're also partially a bad employee. And maybe bad managers have some bad employees. It's never 100% that way, but there's always a give and a take somewhere. Right? Might only be 10%, but there may be something you can learn from. So you've got to network internally and understand what's going on in different departments. The more relationships you have throughout the company, when your name comes up in a management meeting, the more people can speak about you. So don't be siloed into your little area, right? Having a movie, right? Looking at movies for mentorship, right? I wouldn't go looking for a 2-foot alien to be your mentor. However, if you've got somebody, right, like a Yoda, somebody who is the subject matter expert, right? I mean, think about this. No one's looking and saying, that's the dude I want to go hang out with for a week and learn how to be a Jedi, right? However, subject matter expert. And it's a mentorship from a kid to an adult. It's a mentorship to somebody who's great at what they do. You've got to look and say, whose advice, when I don't know which way to go, can I trust blindly? If I don't know if I should relocate for this job, who am I going to trust to guide me in the right direction? If I don't know if I should quit my job and go someplace else, who do I trust? If I don't know if I should tackle this project, who can I ask? Who can I trust? Find that person. Don't force it, but put yourself out there where the magic happens. Get out of your comfort zone to find somebody different, somebody who's successful, somebody who's been promoted quickly, who's had great career growth, who is viewed by the CEO of a company as a go-to person. Right? So let's look at our takeaways. Building relationships with your boss. You need to have one. Start the conversation, communicate. If you're not willing to talk about what you need to do to get better and to hear the bad news, you're destined to stay where you're at. Sharpen the saw. Challenge yourself. Get new skills. Improve the way you see the world. Be competitive. Light the fire within against yourself and against your peers. Work harder than your colleagues. I tell you, it's a great thing to have a management team that says, nobody works harder than Mary. She is a horse. She goes hard all the time. Right? Challenge yourself to be great. Set a goal for yourself and hit it. It's almost like being a runner, right? PR, personal record. Set what you want and then go achieve it. Be a culture giver. Care about the company. Care about the team. Know that you are one part of that whole company. And if you don't do your job well, you're not pushing others. And if you're not pushing others, they're not growing. If they're not growing, the company will eventually lose revenue. Network within the company. You need to make friends throughout the organization. People need to know who you are and why you're important, that you get things done within your group. Find a mentor, somebody who's been there, done that, succeeded, and then trust them. I mean, really, you got to invest in relationships, and you've got to trust people. So if you want more information, check out our blog at LaSalleNetwork.com. There's a icon for the 9-step guide to a promotion on there. And we hope you found this valuable. Susan, I will hand it back to you.
Thanks, Tom. We've had some great engagement and questions asked throughout, so we'll try to get to them all. The first question for you, Tom, is from Jack, and he asks, is there ever a right time to ask for a promotion throughout the year? Mid-year, end-of-the-year review, what would you suggest for him?
I don't like it at mid-year reviews because at that point it's almost too late. And so it's either there and the management's talking about it or it's not. I think when you believe that you want to get promoted in your department or your organization is to set up some time with your manager, and or if you have a big human resources function that adds value, is to go to your human resources function first. They're great advocates. And to say, I really believe I want to get promoted and want to be able to talk to somebody about what it's going to take to do that, what the time frame is. Don't be discouraged by the time frame. You're in the company. You see whether there's people and how long they've been there and what capacity. But the first step to do it is to talk about it. If you have a great HR department, definitely utilize them.
All right, and then question number 2 is from Krista, and she just asks you if you have a rival. Is it within the company, outside the company to help you grow and succeed?
Yeah, so I'm in a couple different peer groups. So I have CEOs of other companies that I measure myself against about how fast their companies are growing and what they're doing. And then in the marketplace, we're up against different companies all the time for awards for growth. And we've been fortunate. We're an Inc. 5000 company 10 years in a row, but our numbers, we want to grow and become a better, a faster growing company and rise up that list. So I have internal competitors and external competitors every day.
All right, and then this is going to be the last question for the webinar. It's from Erica, and she says, my boss is hardly ever in the office. She's constantly traveling and super hard to get a hold of. So she's asking you, how should she try to get a hold of her to have better communication?
Well, if they're going to be traveling, I think it's realizing what's important to your boss, and you've got to find that out. So what projects are you doing for her, and when is the deadline for those? And then the communication method of how to do more. And I would say that it's over-communicating. So if somebody's traveling all the time, I would say it's probably email is best, and then to figure out a way that gets her attention. So when you're doing emails as the primary form of communication, bullet format is the best. You want it to pop out, you want it to be brief, and you want it to be an overview of what's going on, right? And if you know that somebody's resigning or getting fired or whatever the status is, speak up to your boss and say, hey, I know that you let Mary go last week. I would love the opportunity to interview for that role. And simultaneously, be networking throughout the company like we talked about, so other managers and departments know what you're doing. And in addition, be talking to your human resources folks and build relationships there so that people know that you're still making things happen, you're accomplishing goals.
Great. Thank you, Tom, for answering and giving all that advice. I think that this is a good point to end the webinar. Sorry if we weren't able to get to your questions. If we didn't, just tweet your questions at Tom Gimbel for his Twitter account, @TomGimbel, and he'll try to answer them for you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If you jumped in a few minutes late or in the middle, don't worry. I will be sending out the recording link within the next week to everyone who has registered, and you can listen to the full webinar on there. And thank you, Tom, for being with us today. I know you're very busy, and we really appreciate your advice. And don't forget to stay connected with us. We are constantly sharing advice on our outlets. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram to stay connected. There's also going to be a short survey after the webinar ends, so if you could just take a minute or two, we would love your feedback. Again, thank you for joining us all today, and we hope to see you again on our next webinar.